you. I'm a weak man, but I'm in strong hands. Falling to my knees where I learn to stand. When I can't walk, you carry me along. In my weakness, you are strong. I'm a broke heart with a busted plan, but you keep working with a broken man. What I can't do, you've been doing all along. In my weakness, you are strong.
All right, so welcome to the pilot episode of the Weak Man podcast. Very special guest with me today. First, what I wanted to do is, and I can't remember if I already explained this to you, Jeff, but wanted to kind of explain the premise for the name of the podcast because
Sure.
I got some mixed feedback and a little bit of hate on the name.
Oh, it's no good.
So I wanted to provide some context.
Sure.
So in 2 Corinthians chapter number 12, in verse number 8, it says, 3 times I begged the Lord to take it away. Each time he said, my grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. So now I am glad to boast about my weakness, so that the power of Christ can work through me. So, I think that, and then he goes on to say, that's why I take pleasure in my weakness. Right? So, I think that that's the Apostle Paul writing, and I think there that we can kind of understand, hopefully, that I'm not obviously saying we're a bunch of weak dudes, right?
Not at all.
That are going to be on telling our stories, but that through our weakness, that we're allowing Christ to be strong. So
yeah, that's a pretty powerful verse when you think about it.
And I think that I think it also speaks to when we try to do things, in our own power and our own wisdom and our own strength, that that a lot of times it's going to fail. So. Yeah, so that's the.
All right, I like it. Did you come up with that on your own, or?
I did, yeah. I
right.
I did, and as my pastor always says, like he'll say something and then he'll say, let me put a little Bible on that, right?
Yeah,
so that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to provide some context and put a little Bible on it. So
I like it. Yeah, we've been having a lot of those types of conversations offline here recently. It's been pretty interesting. Yeah. A simple call for happy birthday turns into 45 minutes of life lessons explained.
Yeah,
pretty cool.
That's okay. You're like, hey, I'll call you right back.
I really want you to talk about the part that you told me the other day that, I was like one of your mentors. I really want you to make sure that you preface that on this podcast.
Yeah, you want to make sure that's highlighted.
I would appreciate it.
On the record.
Yeah, I would appreciate it. I'd appreciate it. But we've known each other for a long time, Mark.
Yeah, and I don't know that I've ever actually voiced that to you, and if I haven't, shame on me, because I've felt that way for a very long time. And look, I understand what you were saying. You're like, man, I look back on those days, and I made so many mistakes, and I'm a different man now, and I understand all that, and trust me, I am too. But there are certain things that you instilled in me as a leader, that carried me through my career. And, and I often look back and I know that God put, you in my life, at a certain time for a certain purpose. But I think also there was a flip side to that.
Sure.
Me as being a younger man, but I can remember very distinctly, and I don't know if you remember this, but I can remember when I first started at Timberland, and you were the general manager, I was your assistant manager, and we were kind of, joking around as we often do and did.
Absolutely.
And you made a little bit of maybe like an off-color joke, or I don't remember exactly what it was. And I remember looking at you and saying, I'm praying for you, Jeff. And I don't know if you
Well,
remember that, but you were
well,
very taken back. You were very taken back. You were kind of like,
yeah, yeah,
serious? You're like,
yeah,
serious? And I'm like, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
I mean it. And you were
yeah,
like, thanks, man. I appreciate that.
yeah,
And
yeah. It kind of puts a damper on the off-coloredness of the joke, but that's good. That's
yeah,
accountability, isn't it? It's
yeah, for
accountability.
sure.
Yeah.
And I think, I think back to that as well. That whole dynamic of not only were you somebody that I looked at as a mentor, you definitely you were the one that gave me my first shot. Not only as a entry level manager, but also you were very instrumental in me becoming a general manager for the first time
I
at,
appreciate that. You deserve that. You're a hard worker, and
at the
it
ripe
was
old
hard
age of
back in that
24.
days, man.
Yeah,
Retail is a very, very strenuous position. It's rewarding, but it also takes some years off your life. Yeah, I think you'd probably agree with that. And we went at it pretty hard. We really did. Had a lot of success together, and it's hard building a team and putting people around you. Just like we try to do now in our personal lives, we try to really put the best people around us. And sometimes our discernment isn't quite what it needs to be or should be. And there's people that kind of get in that inner circle that have to be weeded out. But that was all part of the plan, is really trying to put together a great team and have people that you trust. That's important, and people that kind of had the same work ethic, but also same moral compass as you. And I know those sounds like easy things. People listening might say, I have all of those. Everybody might think they do, but you really don't when it comes to being on the front line. It's pretty challenging. And you did a good job.
yeah.
I'm
It's
proud of you.
I appreciate that, man.
Yeah, I am. I don't say that lightly.
I appreciate that.
I
Yeah.
really don't. So
I have a buddy that always says that he and his wife they actually bought a historic wedding chapel or a historic chapel that they turned into a wedding venue and chapel and they always jokingly say that they're flying the plane while they're building it because they're like we're still figuring it out.
isn't that the
And
truth?
I can definitely think back to being 24 years old and being handed the keys to a multi-million dollar a year business
Yeah.
and being like, what did I get myself into?
Yeah. It can be
Um,
daunting sometimes, right?
yeah,
It really
yes, it
can
is.
be. Yeah.
But man, a lot of great experiences. I look back on those times in Hagerstown, with me, you, and Sean, and some of the others, and man, those were some of the most fun work times of my life.
Yeah. They really were. And we spent so much time with one another. I mean, it was pretty incredible when you think about the hours you put in. And there's rewarding times of it as well. But when you think about how many hours you put in and who you're spending that with, again, that's another important thing that goes into it. You want to spend it with those people you kind of really like. And we had some really great times. And um, some nights so good times, those long nights where we were doing inventory or whatnot. But I tell you, I remember a lot of great times as well. So too bad Sean can't be on this conference call, excuse me, this podcast,
Yeah,
um, because he was a funny guy too. He's a funny guy.
yeah. I don't know if you remember this too, but we did try to interject our faith um, probably even sometimes in a way that maybe would have been frowned upon by by senior leadership. But I can
Yeah,
remember us having like leadership meetings and doing a Bible study together.
that's right. Over
Uh,
breakfast.
yeah,
I forget
yeah,
the restaurant, but it was over breakfast. Yeah, I remember. And I think it was the four of us. And there's
yeah.
another person
Pastor
involved in
Jesse.
that as well. Yeah, yeah, it would be frowned upon. It would have been then, but definitely now it would have been something that people wouldn't have felt comfortable with. That's for sure.
Yeah,
But it was good. Those are good old days. They really are. It's interesting how you and I have stayed connected as well, because obviously now I live in Florida, and we've separated, and but I feel like when I talk to you, it's just like old times. And honestly, Mark, there's many times where um I'm just sitting around or I'm at work and I'll think about you. And I kind of know like I need to text or call. And it's really ironic and maybe not ironic. It's really kind of, God, working through us. But maybe there's been times I've called you when you're like, man, I was just thinking about you or I needed that and vice versa. And those are cool. That's cool to me. That's cool to me how God puts people in your life that you can really lean into and rely on. It doesn't have to be every day, but we can pick up the phone and act like it. We just talked to each other yesterday, and
Yeah,
that's really cool. I like that. I like that.
sure.
So, man, what do
Well, I
you want
guess,
to get? What do you want to get
well, I
out
was
of
gonna say,
this? Tell me
I
what you
guess
want to
I
get
didn't
out of
really,
this.
I didn't even really formally introduce my guest. So my
Yeah,
guest
yeah, yeah.
on this, this pilot episode of this
I would, I,
podcast. I don't even know how I got into this, but
I would like to call it a historical event that is happening
I
right now.
mean, yeah, it's monumental.
Monumental,
Uh,
historical, but yeah, yeah,
yeah, Jeff Blair, previously of the Martinsburg and Hedgesville, West Virginia area, and
yeah.
you moved to Georgia, and what year was that?
Yeah, 2005 we moved to Georgia on Lake Lanier, right outside of Atlanta, and then in 2011 we moved to Florida and kind of started our life here. And it's really interesting. We knew folks on my wife's side in Georgia, but when we moved to Florida, we knew no one. We just blindly moved here for an opportunity, and it's all worked out. It hasn't been easy, but it's all worked out in the end. So, and I work for a Catholic high school right now. I'm in development. I love that. So similar to retail, if you want to call it that, you're still generating revenue,
Yeah.
but it's obviously in a faith based organization, which I like. And I'm not Catholic, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you asked me what I want to get into,
Yes. I want to. I
and
want to know. I want to
you
know what you
know,
want from this.
I think that initially, whenever I felt um, whatever you want to call it, the calling or the desire to do a podcast. I'd started doing a video series with business owners,
Yeah, I
um,
like it.
and with that, I feel like I'm always rushing people, because I'm like, if the videos are too long, no one's gonna watch it, and
Right.
so I'm like, all right, yeah, okay, next question, and I don't really have time to like dig in, and I really wanted to do obviously something more faith based. That's obviously near and dear to my heart, and I think that I was inspired by. I think I may have told you about this by another podcast. It's called The Uncomfortable Truth,
Yeah, you did.
and and their like kind of I guess you could say mission of their podcast was it was a place for where men could be vulnerable,
Hmm.
and that's kind of listening to that, and then I think that's where I kind of got the idea for the name as well, right? Is
Hmm.
because we as men, whether it be in our homes as dads, as husbands, in the workplace as leaders, giants of the industry, right?
That's right. That's
That
right.
well, we're kind of expected to have the answers and have it all together
Yeah.
and suck it up, and so I thought that this would be a good opportunity just to number one, just share some stories,
Hmm.
whether it be testimonies, whether it be things that we've learned through leadership. So I really that's one of the things I wanted to get into with you, which we've already kind of like scratched the surface a little bit. But I
Yeah.
wanted to just like talk about maybe let you tell your journey, and how you feel you've developed, as a leader,
Yeah.
how your faith has fit into that, and then some of the lessons that you've learned maybe over the years. So
Hmm.
I don't really know where you want to go with that, but
Yeah.
just
Well, I'll start out by saying this is that faith has always led me down the most paved road. It can be really hard when you are leading in an environment that is faithless. And that's the challenge, is to really try to incorporate your beliefs and your values into an organization to make it flourish, because I believe everything flourishes um, through the Lord. But yeah, it's I'll tell you another challenge as well, and I will tell you some positives here in a minute. But a few challenges is really not giving in to status quo, what people want you to be, and what they feel you need to be, and it takes I guess quite a bit of guts and leadership ability to really say and believe in what you were doing is correct, and really move from there, because there's so many people that sit back and they're looking for you to fail, and they're looking for you to flounder. Um, and that's another thing you've got to always be careful of, is those folks that kind of litter the highway. And but I think that, again, I'm going to go back to what I said: having other people with like-minded people around you is so important. And I think it's important to say this too. Is just because I'm a Christian, I don't have to always profess that. And what I mean by that is, I don't think the workplace should always be a WWJD kind of environment, if you know what I mean. I think people see you for your fruits. I really do. And I think it could lead into conversations. And I think people will see God through you. I really do believe that. I think there's a time and place, though, to proclaim it, but I don't think the environment has to always be churchy. I just think that God asks us to be faithful in what we do and how we move and operate. And honestly, Mark, that's just what I've tried to do. Failed a lot, and I like to think there's some good success in there with you. You guys. I love watching you guys gain success. That was always something I loved. As a dad, I don't receive gifts very well, Christmas, birthdays, but I love to give gifts to my kids. I have two children. And, when we used to do Christmas, they used to always want me to go first. And it was almost kind of embarrassing because I didn't know how to receive it. And I think you know, that's kind of who we are. It's how kind of you are. It's humility. It's trying to be humble, but you try to incorporate what you can in the workplace or around different people that you think you're going to impact. And again, prayer and supplication is very important. Really constantly asking God to take the wheel basically and lead you and guide you where He wants you to be. And sometimes you think you're heading in the right direction and He doesn't. And those are difficult times as well, when you really think everything is so smooth. You feel like everything is going great. And all of a sudden you just feel in your heart that something's stirring. And you try your best not to allow that thing to happen, but it does. And but it's really cool to see how everything kind of ends out and pans out in the end.
Yeah, I want you to share too, if you don't mind. I mean, you can
Yeah,
go
yeah,
as
yeah,
personal or as deep as you want, but I really
yeah,
want you to share some of the kind of crazy times of uncertainty that you had after you decided to just relocate your family, to the other
yeah,
side of the country.
yeah,
Well, not really the other side of the country, but to the deep south.
yeah,
And you went
yeah,
down there, and then some things changed, right? So
yeah.
walk me through some of those things and just how your faith sustains you through those difficult times.
Yeah, well, one of the first things that we try to do is establish a good school for our kids. Our kids never were in a private school until we moved here, and we just didn't like the school system the way it was set up. It wasn't school choice. It was basically, we moved here in June of 2011, and most everybody had already been placed in a school system. And of course, the better spots fill up pretty quickly. And then you're left with, C and D opportunities. So that's when we first started to look at private school for our kids. And, I'll tell you a true story, Mark. What happened, I got promoted to move to Florida. We were excited about that. We were happy. Um, we were uncertain. After you move here, you're like, this is great. But, one of the biggest things is I traveled so much, and I would leave and then the family would be at home. So they were really trying to navigate sometimes without me. And I operated a district at the time, South Florida, and it was all new and kind of glittery for me. But here we were; they were back at home. But I remember I had a meeting at 7:30 in the evening, and it might have been on a Tuesday, I believe. And I'm sitting in my hotel room, not at all knowing what this is going to be about. However, having conversation with my wife, Debbie, about how are we going to pay for private school. We don't know, but we just knew that we wanted them to be in the school. We toured it, and we immediately said that we think that's where they need to be. We really did. We just felt that was going to be the place for them, and it turned out that it was a great place for them. So I'm having this meeting, and I'm trying not to overanalyze it like I do. I am an overanalyzer, and I'm sitting in.
Don't say.
Yeah, I know. I don't say, right. So I'm sitting in the room, and I'm thinking, it can't be bad. I just started. We're doing some good things. So it was with the senior vice president of the company, and at the time I had a regional manager. We got on the phone, and it was a little awkward and weird. And I thought, wow, maybe something did happen. They asked me a lot of questions and how I've been adjusting. Was I liking it? How's the family doing? And I'm like, where are we going here? Like, we've already kind of, during the interview process, they send you to a location. You spend a few days here and decide if you want to live here or not, go back home. And then that's how it starts. The process starts. And that's what we did. So I'm like, what are we doing here? And he said, well, listen, I'm going to just go ahead and cut to the chase. He's like, we feel that your pay status is not where it needs to be. And I was like, okay. And he said, we are going to increase your salary to X amount. And honestly, it was almost to the penny, Mark, almost to the penny of what we needed to send our kids to school. True. That's the truest story I can tell you, that how when you put those things in God's hands, he basically says, are you sure? Because I work for you, but are you sure you've got the other part for me? And that's hard, because you always want someone to work for you, right? You want everything to work out for you. But when it comes to giving up something else of yourself, that's where it's hard. And I think we did. We've tried to be as faithful as possible. We've tried to raise our kids in a Christian environment. And man, that is one of many ways that God really came and showed up. He really did. And that was a financial thing. There's been many, many other just personal things that have happened, but that was one of the financial things I'll never forget. I didn't know what to say. It was unbelievable. I had just gotten an increase to move, and I thought it was very good. And now all of a sudden I'm getting another one, and it's going to be for the cost of the schooling. And you can't make these things up. When people say God doesn't work or doesn't move, I don't know if I'd say it's in mysterious ways. You know how people say God works in mysterious ways? No, he works in just ways he's used to working in. It could be mysterious to us, but that's because
His
we don't.
ways are not our ways, right?
His
That's
ways are
probably
not our ways.
why they seem mysterious, because they're not our ways, right?
That's right. That's right. That's right. I'm gonna have to pause for a second. Can you plug me in, Debbie, real quick?
We'll
Here
just
you go.
pause for a quick
Yes.
ad read. When I'm thirsty, I like to grab for a Coke Zero, cold, refreshing. So Coke, if you're listening, I'd love for you to sponsor this podcast.
That would be really cool. That would be really cool.
Hey, we were just talking about God's ways are not our ways. So if he wants,
Hey,
if he wants
what
Apple to sponsor me, he'll make it happen.
wouldn't that be him saying,
Yeah,
told you,
yeah.
told you. Okay, so, but listen, man, that's a true story. It's crazy.
My color just got funky all of a sudden for
I
some
see
reason. I
that.
don't
Yeah, you're real.
know.
You look like a
Getting
Martian.
crazy. Yeah. Jeez, there we go.
Yeah. Hey,
So,
listen, this can be play. We can really just play with this and maybe do a real one and with some similar things, whatever you want. So I don't want to jack it up for you.
no, it's all
So
good.
Yeah.
I did though. You didn't go far enough back, and you didn't go to actually the situation that I was thinking of. So
Which
I
one
was
was that?
thinking of that you relocate your family to Georgia, and then all of
Yeah.
a sudden something crazy happens.
Which part? There's a lot of craziness that happened.
Well, I mean, you were at one point you were unemployed, correct?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I like
Yeah.
to me that was the crazy. It was like, okay, yeah, we're gonna relocate. We're gonna move to
Yeah.
Georgia from West Virginia.
Yeah.
We're gonna take a leap of faith. Everything's doing great, and then all of a sudden,
Yeah.
like, takes
Yeah.
a U turn.
We can, are we on? Are we running
Yeah, I
live?
never stopped
Okay.
recording.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, another situation was when we moved from West Virginia to Georgia. It's a big move for us. My first move ever. I grew up in West Virginia my whole life until I was 35 years old, and we moved. And we had two kids at the time. We still do, rather, but we had two children, two young children. Made a big move, sold our house. Things were really looking good. That was 2005. Middle of 2007, I got the dreaded phone call. Actually, let me share this with you. I'm going to share this with you. I'm not going to share it in a way that I used to share it. I'm going to share it as in, this is how things happen. I used to hold a lot of animosity towards this situation, but I really don't anymore. I shake my head at it, but I don't. So I'm on the road. I'm traveling to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and the senior vice president for the Timberland company at the time says, I'm gonna fly in. I want to travel with you that week." And I was like, "Okay, sure," which is not abnormal. You knew that. They would often come and do trips with us. So no problem. I'm there anyway because I'm dealing with like an HR uh, um, uh, a security issue with an employee. So I knew I had to do a termination unless something miraculously changed. But I knew I was going to have to do a termination. So that was the reason I was there as well. And got there, and this senior vice president asked me if I could pick him up at the airport. And I said, yeah, sure. Not abnormal. And again, it's kind of normal on how things go. So I picked him up, and he said, "Hey, just pick out wherever you want to eat. I'm going to be hungry." I think I picked him up at the airport. It was around 7, ish. So picked out this great place to eat that I love. Now I don't very much, but I really enjoyed it. Anyway, um, we're going to dinner, and I noticed he brought his briefcase in, which I thought was odd because it was not a working dinner. It was more of a just, "Hey, I'm just getting in." So all of a sudden we sat down and we ordered, and still everything was fine. So again, I'm overanalyzing this. In my mind, I'm thinking, there's everything's cool. So as soon as we ordered, they brought our drinks over, and he said, "Hey, listen, there's a couple of things I want to go over with you." And then I knew something was wrong. And he said, "The company is going in a different direction. We are downsizing. We're eliminating some districts," because I was a district manager at the time. "And you're going to be one of them." And I sat there, and honestly,
And
our food came.
this was how long after you guys had moved down
Oh
there?
man, Mark, this was 2 years and maybe 5 months, 6 months,
Okay,
that
so
we had
not
moved. So
terribly
almost
long.
3 years. No, no, no. And honestly, I thought that what I was doing, I really thought I was doing a good job, based on what I was handed. I thought that we were making good strides. And so we sat
So
there,
I'm
and
sorry. You said you were
yeah,
making good.
man. So the food comes, and here we are sitting there, and I didn't know what to do. And I started to eat, and finally I just said to this person, you know, what was the issue? "Well, unfortunately, you haven't been with us as long as some others, and we're downsizing." No, no, nothing. So I said, "Hey, I think I'm going to get my food to go," and that's what I did. So he's looking at me and he said, well, can you still give me a ride to my hotel? Again, I wanted to do so many things so bad. And honestly, I just think God wouldn't let me. He wouldn't let me. He kind of handcuffed me to this person. So I drove him to his hotel, and he had given me, during that time, I forgot, he had given me all the paperwork that I needed to sign and laid it out as to what my role would be, which would be, I still want you to go do the termination tomorrow. And after that, you are finished with the company. And this is what your severance package will be, which was a very good severance, actually. I will say that. But this is your
I'm
severance
sorry.
package.
I want to.
Yeah,
I,
sorry. I don't want to
no,
ramble here.
no. I know for obviously for confidentiality reasons you're not going to get
Yeah,
into detail, but is this the
yeah,
termination that I think that we're talking about? And so that was a difficult
yeah.
conversation in itself, right?
That was one in itself. So I
Yeah.
go to the store
So
the next.
on
I
top
go
of
to the,
all that,
yeah.
yeah,
On top of all that, I'm dealing with that and not really knowing how this is going to work out. But one of the things is our loss prevention director actually was in town as well.
okay,
So when I showed up to the store the next morning, after I sulked all night and I went through the whole stage of, pissed,
yeah,
irritated, hurt, hurt again, pissed, hurt again, the whole thing. And trying to tell myself this is for the best, which it actually was, but this is for the best and it's going to work out. But then all of a sudden in the back of my mind, there's so much uncertainty. I'm like, what am I going to do? I have a family, man. I have a family that is relying on me.
yeah,
We just moved. We love where we live. Am I going to be able to stay here? All those different things. So fast forward, I get through the night and I went to the store, and I remember meeting the LP director at the door. He let me in and he looked at me and I said, hey, his name. And he's like, hey. And we walked to the back and he said, I'm surprised you're here. I said,
So
well,
he
what do you
already
mean?
knew.
Yeah, he knew. He knew. And he just said to me, he's like, man, I can't even begin to understand. And I didn't have a great relationship with this person, but a really good working relationship. So it wasn't like we were buddies. And he said, I just feel it's the wrong move. And he said, I just can't believe that you're here. But Mark, I mean, honestly, growing up, that's just the way my parents taught me to be. I mean, not trying to be cliche, but they just said, no matter what, do what you're supposed to do, and then move on. So there I am, and long story short, I did my job there. I left the store. I drove home, the longest drive home ever, 5.5 hours home to Atlanta. Got home, and my wife was very consoling. And I'll tell you this: she gives me this unbelievable, different kind of peace about things. She has a very different outlook on certain things, and I just felt that she still loved me, and that's kind of how we feel with the Lord, right? Is when things happen to us, it is for design. He designed it, and He loves us. He's doing it because He
Yeah,
does love us. But yeah. So we talked, cried a little, laughed, joked about what life was going to be like after those days, and but it was tough. It was really tough. It was right before Christmas. That was really, Mark, my first year that I can remember that I was not working at Black Friday. So that in itself was relaxing, but really weird, because
yeah,
my mind is always, working in November, December is like, those were the months
yeah.
that just
Peak
crushed
season,
us.
right? Yeah,
You're just going at full speed and you're not even breathing. So yeah, I tell you, I had a lot of time to really just relax, sometimes more time than I wanted. But I had more time than I needed, and it really turned out to be probably good for me. And I ended up getting a job. I got 10 months severance pay, and I ended up getting a job on the ninth month.
wow.
And we were headed. I don't want to go into too much detail and get too wordy here, but We were actually headed to Houston, Texas to work for Nike. And
That's
I'd
right.
always wanted to work for the swoosh. But I didn't want to go to Houston, but this was where
Yeah.
the opportunity was. And I was telling a friend about this opportunity, and she said, "Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I, let me call you back tomorrow." I was like, "Okay." So she calls me back and said, "Listen, you know, how tied are you to your position that you're currently in now?" I said, "Well, I mean, I need a job." She said, "Well, if I can get you this position for right now, and with an opportunity that will come in 8 to 10 months, would you be willing to listen?" I said, "Yeah." So that's how I started working at Coach, and kind
I'm
of the
listening.
rest is history. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I could go on and on for days, Mark, with the stories,
Sorry,
and
my
you have them
my
too.
nose decided to start leaking as we were sitting there.
Yeah, and I mean, and you have them too. But the Timberland thing, I remember talking to, because I had 2 weeks to pack everything up. I had to send back my phone. At the time, man, I was getting a car allowance. I had just
Yeah.
purchased a new car because I had to. They basically base it off of mileage, so you kind of re-up every couple of years. I just purchased a new car, so I wasn't getting that, and that wasn't part of my severance package. But anyway, I'm packing up, and I remember one of my peers calling me, a very wise person from the Midwest, and he said, "Hey, we were having some small talk conversation, and he said, man, he's like, I can't believe this happened, and you're just kind of, okay, you're a little upbeat." And I said, "Well," I said, "I'm still concerned." And he said, "Well, what do you think happened?" And I said, "Well, honestly," and I don't want to call this name out, but very wise guy, older than me at the time as well. And I said, I'll call him Jim. I said, Jim, it's really hard to understand why things happen, but sometimes people just don't want to work with you. And I really feel that's the situation. And that's kind of what it was, is that this, you know, team leader didn't want to work with me. And it happens. So, and
So
that
I
kind of that
wanna.
kind of helped me get through it a little bit too, Mark, because you look at your leadership skill set and you always think, man, I'm deficient. Like, I'm not good enough now to do it again. That's the hardest hurdle to get over, when you lose something that you've worked so hard to get. And it's like, now all of a sudden you're starting over and you're like, man, I got to prove myself all over again. I worked for this company for 10 years, and now, like that, I'm gone. And yeah, that's another thing, is getting over that mental hurdle, is like, hey, am I really who I thought I was?
Yes. I I wanna. So I wanna ask you a question, but it's funny that you bring up what you just did, because I can remember distinctly, especially as a young man, just holding so much stock in like my professional reputation to
Hmm.
where, um, I mean, I was with Nike for 10 years, and
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I kind
I was very
of
envious, by the way.
I mean, I
You had a
started
really
when I
good
was
career
30.
there.
Yeah, and I left when I was 40, and
Hmm.
so I mean, a huge part of my career at this place, and I enjoyed a lot of success. And I just remember like my feeling like my identity was tied to that job. Like that's
Hmm. Hmm.
especially locally,
Yeah.
actually being in a location the majority of the time. That's who
Yes.
people knew me as, right?
Yes.
It's like, oh, that's Mark from Nike. It's like that's just. And um,
Yeah.
of course, the reasons for leaving were I think the right reasons. And
Hmm.
um, but yeah, I can remember going through some times where I thought I was not going to have that job, and just being like distraught, because I'm like, this is going to taint my reputation. This is going
That's
to,
right.
you know, like, and everything was tied up so much on like, um, what my resume was going to look like, and all these things. But I wanted to see if, this is, I mean, again, so you're talking, this was like 2008-ish when all this went down, right?
Yeah. 2007 was when it happened, and then it ran into 2008.
So
And
we're
we're in a
talking
massive,
18 years ago.
yeah. And we're
So
at the time, I wanted to mention, we're in a recession too. We're just
Right.
2006, 7, 8 is not good
Yeah.
for retailers.
So, do you remember what this situation kind of did to your faith? Like, do you feel like this was a time when you leaned in, or do you
Yeah.
feel like it was a time when you pushed away? And what were some things that you feel like God taught you through that challenging time?
Well, the one is to always stay close, never lose sight. You mentioned something about your identity. Our identity is through Christ and Christ alone. That's what it should be, not through a man, positions, companies, none of that. Unfortunately, we're human, and it can become that. It's a fine line, isn't it? And that's one of the things that I think hit me in the face right away. But no, I didn't at all push away from God. I kind of felt probably a little hypocritical because I was leaning in so much. And that's the devil speaking, because he doesn't want you to do that. He doesn't want you to be comforted by anyone but his false promises. And man, I just remember feeling somewhat of a sense of hypocrisy. Like, man, I'm a hypocrite. Like, now all of a sudden I'm wanting to go to church more, I'm praying more, or I'm talking more spiritual language or whatever. But I think in all those things you grow and you learn to trust God more. And I again, we always say we do, right? We do when things are great. We do. We're like, oh, my faith is in the Lord Jesus Christ. And you're, making a great salary, you have a great home, your wife still comes around you and loves you, all that kind of stuff. But when those other things happen, he still loves us. Do we love him as much as we said we did? I mean, that's when you have to really figure those things out. And that's when I think that, God wants us to really press in harder. And again, I don't think he can remember those times when we haven't. I think that he has a short-term memory loss. You know what I mean? Is that what, would I say that? Is that say that correctly? And I think that you know, I don't want to say he puts us in situations that are going to kind of kill us, but I think he does allow us to go down a path or down roads that to teach us lessons and to also bring us back around, kind of like the prodigal son, you know. And that's kind of maybe how I felt a little bit was, I just I gotta continue to press in. I gotta next time I get a job, I gotta make sure my priorities remain like they are now and not how they were, you know. And so that was one of the biggest things. But you know I don't think I ever some people go through that time where they blame everything on God, or they go through kind of a stepping away period. That wasn't it for me. It was more, I was more like wanted to draw closer. It really was. And that's kind of where I felt my comfort the most. If I didn't go to church, I would be not feeling good or not feeling right about it or whatever it might be. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and
Hopefully.
and I would agree, man. For me, it's always been harder for me to, I don't want to say serve God, but for me to have like that sense of urgency about my faith when
Mm-hmm.
things are going great in my life,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yep.
When when the job's good and the family's healthy and marriage is strong and you just kind of have a tendency to get sit back in your chair and just put things on cruise control, right? But
Yeah. It's
when you're
true.
in the trenches, when you're crying out like, God, I don't know how I'm gonna make it through today.
Yeah.
That's when our faith needs to
Yeah.
rise up.
Mark, I can remember that same time. Um, my late brother-in-law had just lost his job. He was an executive for Circuit City. Do you remember them?
Yeah,
Their home office was in, I think, Richmond, Virginia, and he had just lost his job. He relocated from Ohio, to Virginia, and he had a family. So we had some similarities, and I think that was a good time for he and I to start to build a relationship that maybe we didn't have either. So that was a positive for me, and we would call each other randomly. And that's the one time that I really felt the emotion from him, because he was the kind of guy that really wasn't emotional. Everything was just a bump in the road. I'm going to get through it. I'm going to do it. Very positive kind of person. We had many conversations where he actually cried, like, man, this is happening, and we both were kind of like emotional. And I didn't think that was a bad thing. I thought that was actually good for me and he, for our relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about you, man? I mean, we share some similarities, and I know that you've had your bumps in the road as well. And we've talked about
Yeah.
those. Not that I'm putting you on Front Street with that, but it's
No.
kind of some same things, man. It's it hits you when you least expect it to.
I mean, I feel like for me that everything that I put my security in, that God has had to strip it away and make it a point where I could no longer rely on my own, wisdom, knowledge,
Yeah.
abilities to figure it out.
Wow.
And I was
Yes.
actually telling somebody at church about this a while back when I was just going through a really just a tough time, and when I was praying, and it was almost like in my what I would call my mind's eye, like
Mm-hmm.
I could see a picture of me, and it was like I was holding God's hand, and He was reaching back, and it was like a dark path, and but like as He would walk, it was almost like He was illuminating the path, and it
Mm-hmm.
was like He was reaching back, just saying, just hold my hand, like I know
Mm-hmm.
the way.
Yeah.
I know you can't see it, and I know it's scary, not knowing, what's around the corner, but I can see it. And actually, we even talked about this recently in the Bible study. It was like, that God has, He's got the satellite view of our path, right? So we may
Yep.
come up to a hill and we're like, man, I don't know what's over the you know the top of that hill. Well, he's looking at the satellite view. He sees
That's
what's
right.
around the corner. He sees what's over the next peak, and so we need to stay connected to the satellite.
Amen to that. Amen to that.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like in a lot of ways I'm still in that season in my life where I'm like, like God, I don't know what's around the next corner, so I'm just
Yeah.
putting my life and my family and my career and everything that I have, I'm just giving it to you,
Mm-hmm.
and just show me the way.
And the funny thing about it is that we're reflecting on these things and talking the way we are now, but the reality of it is not everything happens the way we say it. We're not always having that conversation with God. I mean, we think we are, but there's some moments where we're out there in the flesh. At least I was, and you got to be wrangled, back in as well, because it can be super frustrating when things are not happening when you think they should, and when you think you've already got your breakthrough, and you really haven't. And so those moments can be frustrating. But I've got a question for you, and I know how I would answer it. But do you find yourself professionally? Do you find yourself um, maybe less loyal? And that sounds bad to say because I know you're a very loyal person. But do you find yourself more opportunistic now with your professional approach than you have before? Does that make
Yes,
sense?
yes, 100%. I used to be.
Same.
Do you know how many times? Do you know how many times in that 10 years that I worked for Nike that people wanted to recruit me and, hey
Yeah.
man, let's just sit down and talk, and I'd be like, nah, like I'm good,
Yes.
because I was, but who knows the opportunities that I passed up.
I
Um,
know, I know. And again, I would have answered it just like you did, and I wasn't sure how you felt about it, but I probably that's part of the growth professionally in me is that not that I'm always looking for something different, but I'm always gonna listen. and talk to people,
I
and
think also
and network for sure.
situations like what you dealt with, seeing that, but then also, when I was at Nike, I saw somebody that had been there for 25 plus years
Mm,
that they did the same thing to, and it was just like, boom, they were gone. And I'm like,
yeah.
you start to realize that unfortunately, you are replaceable. And no matter
Hmm.
how much you think you mean to that company, they will replace you and you will be forgotten.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
you give blood, sweat, and tears, and you and I are both, cut from the same cloth as far as like I know I
We
did
are.
things
We
that
are.
no one would ever notice and know that I did. But like C.S. Lewis said, integrity is doing the right
Hmm.
thing even when nobody's watching, and
Yeah.
I mean I would do something and I'd be like I'm gonna fix that even though nobody will notice but me. But it's the right
Yes.
thing to do because I saw it. And
Yes.
but
And isn't it
so
funny how I'm the same way? I am. I still am. But isn't it funny how we irritate people of being that way? Because
yes,
there's other people
yeah,
say
because they'd be like,
it looks
dude,
fine.
like, come
Yeah.
on,
Yeah.
nobody's gonna know, nobody's gonna see that.
Yeah. But
Hey,
you
so
will.
I don't know if you can see this, but
Yeah. I do.
do you see the title there?
Yeah. God's ways are
And
not our ways.
you see the date?
March
So
12th.
that's today. This was my daily devotion that me and a couple guys read together.
Okay.
And when we were talking, it sparked a memory, and so I want to read this to you. It starts out and it says, it reads Isaiah 55:9. It says, for as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. And the devotion just goes on to say, it says, rarely does God do something exactly the way we think he will. Moses experienced this as he learned how God was going to deliver the Hebrews out of Egypt. God told him that he would harden Pharaoh's heart, yet the result was not what Moses anticipated. Rather than allowing the Hebrews to leave, Pharaoh increased their hardship. Rather than becoming a hero among the Hebrews, Moses was despised, right? I mean, they're just like, even when
Dude.
they went out in the desert, they're like, why didn't you just leave us in, Egypt? Uh,
Yeah.
and and then so Moses actually said, like, Lord, why have you brought this trouble on these people? Why did you send me? And much of the frustration that we experience as Christians has nothing to do, listen to this, with what God does or doesn't do. It has everything to do, rather, with the false assumptions that we
Mm,
make about how we think God will and should act.
mm.
And
That's a
man, I think
mouthful.
that sums it up because it's like, we
Yeah.
have in our minds the way that we want God to answer our prayers.
We do.
We
We
want it
do.
neatly packaged and
Yeah.
no extracurriculars, just make
Yeah.
it easy, make my path straight.
Yeah.
And it's just not the way that he does things.
Yeah. Well, March 11th was my birthday. And thank you for the call, by the way. Um, I'm
Thank you,
56.
Facebook, for the reminder.
So I'm 56 years old. No secret. And I think I've shared this with you several months ago. The beauty of getting older is knowing that there is no corporate ladder. You know, like right now, man, I am where I'm going to be and I'm okay with it. Whereas before I was always searching and trying to move up, and I would do anything really within reason to do it, to get it, to gain it. And man, the freedom and the peace of not being that way is amazing. I wish I'd have found it earlier. I really do, because sometimes what you're reaching for and what you think you have is really not that. It's a headache or a burden in the end, and it turns out to be something that maybe you more than what you had wanted, and puts additional strain on relationships. So, but
Yeah.
I just try to think that all the time, is that I am not climbing a corporate ladder, and I'm cool with it. So
I remember at Nike they gave out these awards. They were a Maxim Awards is what they called them, and they had a list of like their kind of what their creed was, or these are the rules that we live by, and they would choose someone that embodied each one of those. Now they later went on to only give out group awards, so
Hmm.
having an individual Maxim award was like a big deal. And I just remember like really coveting that, and I ended up receiving one,
Yeah,
and
I remember.
it was a big deal. Like it was really like, I remember having that, like at that time, well, maybe still, I think it's the largest, group of people that I've ever spoken in front of, to receive
Mm,
that award.
yeah.
All of direct to consumer North America, at Nike. And, but what's funny about those awards? That eventually they go in a box, and, they collect
Hmm.
dust. They really
Yeah.
don't mean anything.
No.
And I want to, this, my goal from here on out, whether I have another year or if I have 30 years, 40 years, whatever it is that I want to store up my treasures in heaven. I
Yeah.
want everything that I do to be recorded up there. And if I'm a beggar on the street down here, then that's okay.
Yeah.
And man, it does take a long time to get to that point, especially as a man, and a man that is driven,
Hmm.
like I know you have been, and like I was, to be successful, to get the promotion, to get the title.
That's right.
And I just really, those things just don't matter anymore.
And Mark,
And they really never
I
did matter.
I would caution your listeners, whoever's listening to this, is don't say those things unless you really mean it, because they come true. Be careful what you wish for. So if you don't mean it, don't say it. If you're still searching for something, or you're driving for something, hey, that's nothing. There's nothing wrong with that. Just keep God first. But I think He wants us to live a great life. I know He does. I know He wants us to be successful. But He wants to be driving that too. And so, but yeah, be careful what you wish for, because He can certainly help you with that if you're saying it out loud.
Yeah.
So,
I
but
think one other thing, and I know we're probably getting pretty close to wrapping up here, but um, I always thought that if you wanted to really serve God, that meant you needed to be in some type of full time ministry, whether it meant
hmm
uh, being a pastor or a missionary or a youth pastor, or whatever it is.
yeah,
And I don't know if you're familiar with John Bevere.
yeah,
Um,
oh yeah, yeah,
one of my favorite speakers right now. He's actually been to our church and spoken, and his son was at the church recently and spoke, Addison. And I listen to his podcast a lot, and I've read some of his books. And I'm actually reading one of his books right now. I believe it's called "You Are Called," if I remember
okay,
correctly. But I think what the book does is really free people to understand that anywhere that you are as a believer, that you can be in ministry.
yeah,
You can be in the business world, and God's going to
yeah,
use you, you know, uh, um, to, to reach people in your sphere of influence. Maybe He's going to bless you with money that's going to be used, to
yeah,
advance the kingdom, whatever it is. And so, I think it's like this delicate balance. Like I think it's okay to be out there grinding and trying to build a
yeah,
business and be successful, but I think what we were just talking about is that as long as your motives are pure, and your
hmm,
reason for doing those things, are the right reasons. Like I'm not just doing it to pad my bank account, or to have the title or the praise of men.
hmm,
Um, but I mean, I think that God does bless businessmen and women, and uses them in great ways. So
yes, yeah. And I thank you for clearing that up, because I feel the same way. I don't think He's called us to be paupers and be scratching and digging for our last meal or whatever. I think He wants us to be blessed. I really do. I think He wants us to live in a blessed state here on earth. But yeah, yeah, I believe it too. And it doesn't make us less aggressive or ambitious when we're not
yeah,
looking for to climb any corporate ladder. It just means that we're comfortable where we are, who we are.
yeah,
That's it.
and I think that He tests our motives, and He knows our deepest thoughts, and why we do the things that we do. And
Hmm.
I mean, I've been very fortunate, and blessed to just make a lot of connections,
Hmm.
like I know you have too, right? Just to be
Yeah.
able to
Yeah.
meet a lot of people, and
Yes.
and he and he's been using me in a lot of those relationships, man. Just whether it be a business owner that's kind of struggling, and I see some low hanging fruit, and I've been able to say, hey, you know what? Why don't you try? Matter of fact, let me help you with this,
Yeah.
and not get anything in return. No praise, no money, nothing, but to be able to just impart some of the wisdom, that I've gained over years of, kind of making the wrong decisions. And uh, so I mean, I love that, and I look forward to being able to do, a lot more of that. And
Yeah.
um, through, like I said, through that video series that I do, I love that. I've seen God do some amazing things through that, and I'm really
Yeah.
excited to see what He wants to do through this podcast. I do think that this is something that He's called me to do.
Hmm.
Again, whether it be if one person benefits from listening,
Yeah.
um, then it was worth the hour of our time, right?
That right on. Yeah. Has it been an hour?
Yeah. Yeah.
Pretty close. Yeah. You know, both of us can talk paint off the wall.
Oh yeah.
And you knew that coming in. You're like, oh gosh, I gotta tame JB.
No, it's
But
man, but
I
I
appreciate.
love number one, anytime I get to to catch up with someone like you that I do consider um a friend, a brother in Christ, a
Yeah.
mentor,
Yes.
someone that's
Thank you.
had
Yes.
a really big impact on my life, dude. I mean,
Yeah.
you really have, and
I genuinely appreciate you saying that. I really do. I really do.
I think as leaders we need to hear that stuff because
Yeah.
it is all the cliches and all the sayings about heavy is the head that wears the crown and all that
That's
stuff
right.
is true.
It
It's a
is
very
true.
it's a thankless thing to be a leader.
Yeah. It is.
Nobody likes the boss. I've experienced that unfortunately way too
Boy, isn't that
much.
the truth? Yes. Yeah.
I've also, though, I mean, I've made some of my greatest friends
Yep.
and connections through life through work. So,
Yeah. I've always said, Mark, that I'm an acquired taste.
oh yeah, me too.
And
I know that.
sometimes people are gonna love me and sometimes they're just not, no matter what I do. So that's kind of where I stand with everything.
Yeah. Well,
Yep.
Jeff, I'm really glad that we had the chance to get on here and catch up, and also, it was a unique perspective for me, um, to be able to ask, some probing questions, and
Yeah.
really kind of hear from your heart. I mean, again, that's what this is all about. Is I think
Yeah.
for men to be vulnerable, share their stories, share their experiences, and hopefully someone will be able to
That's right.
benefit from it. So
That's right.
I think
I
we've
appreciate
accomplished
it.
that.
I'm honored,
Yeah.
man.
And I love you, brother. I think the
Hey,
world of you. Every minute we get to spend, I count it as a blessing.
and likewise, I appreciate you. Proud of you too.
I appreciate that.